Hello, hello, everyone. We are live and welcome to our normal Sundays chat where we have talk about different topics that are relevant to you, especially for us women. But of course, we embrace and we welcome the men that also support us. So thank you so much for being here with us today. So the topic that we wanted to talk about is basically you, your money during uncertain times. Now, of course, most of you may know me. For those who do not, I am Judy Ann Chung. I am your brilliance activator, your confidence, leadership, life coach, and speaker. And what is it that I do with, my clients? I basically help them to rebuild their hope, strengthen their confidence, activate their brilliance, and soar. However, you know what? Confidence and hope is not just centered around, my goals. What is it that I'm able to accomplish? It's also centered around how is it that I manage my life? How do I manage my finances? And that's one of the reasons why I decided in these uncertain times, let us talk about a subject that a lot of us consider taboo. Oftentimes, there is a gender difference in terms of how well a woman will manage her funds versus the man, right? A perfect example. If for those of you who have been through a divorce or know of people who have been through a divorce, usually, most times, the man will pick up with his finances and run very well. It's usually the woman. Sometimes she's a homemaker. So she's not as equipped and understanding some of the different financial pieces of literacy that she should have had. So what happens is that she lags in terms of the wealth building, and that's how we get that uneven platform. So to speak and educate us, I have with me no more than the Shakira Green, who's our financial expert. So I'm going to just read a little bit about her. Of course, she's a veteran in the financial services industry. So I'm just going to share with you just a little bit, if not the whole thing, but just a little bit. So of course, hopefully in the meantime, you guys have gone ahead and you have shared this live because ladies and gentlemen, listen. We want everybody to get this from the top of the hour. We do not want them to be left behind. So listen, go ahead, share, tag, whatever it is that you need to do, your business bestie, your family member. The bottom line is make sure that you share. All right, guys. So who's Shakira Green? She's basically a 15-year financial services veteran. She has a diversified banking and management experience. Her career started out as a teller and she rose through the ranks to various leadership roles. She's been a personal banker, a mortgage representative, a store manager, a district manager, right? So, of course, you can see that she's gone through different areas. So that allows her to get a really vast and deep breadth of financial services. Then, in addition to that, she's also the board member of the Urban League of Essex County, a nonprofit organization. And she also sits on the board of She Wins, another nonprofit organization. And she has established partnerships with different organizations such as United Way, Junior Achievement, Positive Community, and Brothers Making a Difference. So, of course, she didn't leave you brothers out, right? I always want to stress that because sometimes I say, oh, Judy, a lot of your lives are centered on women. Well, I mean, listen, we got to focus on ourselves too, right? But we always welcome the brothers participating. And as you can see, Shakira has too. So, Shakira, I'm just going to pop it over to you for a moment and just let me know if there's anything that you'd like to say in addition to your bio.
Well, first and foremost, Judy, thank you so much for having me. Extremely humble and grateful to be here with everyone today and to share hopefully some knowledge that either you will be able to take back and incorporate into your day-to-day life, or maybe you knew it, just needed a refresher on it. So I'm just happy to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
All righty. And guys, don't be shy. Ask your questions and, we'll try our best to answer them as best as we can. But what we did
Yes.
is that prior to, this live, we went ahead and talk about what are some of the basic things that, would be helpful to you in terms of education. And as you know me, I love definition of things before we go deep. So Shakira,
Yeah.
the first thing I want to talk to you about, I said, can you define what is financial literacy?
Sure. It's educating yourself on finances. It's as
Mm-hmm.
simple as that. And I think I always like to start with how were you introduced to finances? What are some of the things that you were taught from a child
Mm-hmm.
on? We
Right.
all come from different walks and different backgrounds. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, in my family, I was not taught finances. I had to learn by
Oh,
trial and error. I had to
okay.
learn some things as an adult. But if
Hmm.
I really think back to some of my first educational experiences with finances, it started with my grandmother.
Oh,
My
wow.
grandmother, my grandmother, I'll never forget. She told my mom and my auntie to never move out of the projects
Oh,
because
wow.
for her, that meant subsidized living. That meant no matter what happened with your income, you would have a roof over your head. No matter what your situation was and in the relationship that you was in, you would
Hmm.
always have a roof over your head. But, coming from the South and migrating up north,
Hmm.
that was her way of thinking. She couldn't fathom probably her granddaughter owning multiple real estate properties.
Okay.
So that was her mindset, right? And so she
Right.
worked really hard to get an education
Hmm.
and to better herself. And then my mom was the first to start breaking some of those generational curses, I call it, on our family when she decided to start saving up back in 2000 to move us out of an urban community and purchase her first home. So
Hmm.
I think back to some of those earlier stages and what was taught with money, what things that I see. My mom used to always say to me, don't ever walk out the house without looking your best. And so
Right.
translating that over to money, that meant every time I had an interview, every time I had to go out with girlfriends, I'm running out to the mall to get something new because that's what mommy taught me, right? We always want to look our best, but that wasn't showing up the right way in my life. So
Right.
financial literacy is just educating yourself on what could you do differently around your finances. And it could
Right.
be very basic things, which I know we're going to get into.
Right, right. So Paul, I saw where you asked a question about. My question is, you know, is do these credit repair companies really work? So Paul, we're going to get to the credit side of things in a few. Promise me, we won't leave you hanging. But what we want to do first is just set a bit of the foundation.
Great question, Paul.
Yeah, and then we will get into it. And I also see that LaShawn, I did see you. You love that question too. Sure, by all means, we are going to get there, right? And guys, so some of you know my background, right? So I work in investment banking, so I always come at you from a trading point of view. But for this particular live, it's more centered on not just at a basic level, but we want to start at that level and then go up. So this way we ensure that we give you nuggets, especially for these uncertain times. So that's why we're taking that approach in terms of the different sides and facets of financial services. Okay, so let's just take that further. And I love, by the way you shared about with your grandmother and what she taught. She, and was attempting to teach your mother, because at the end of the day, a lot of us grew up that way, right? Now, if we didn't, the message weren't being taught from a certain age group. And we grew up with that mindset, not knowing, as you said, that you can actually have multiple properties. You can actually build generational wealth, right? But before we can even get to the concept of generational wealth, we have to do the basics. We have to get the basic for understanding what it is, even just to not spend anything. You just spoke about looking your best, but you can look your best if you also effectively manage your money and still build legacy, financial legacy, right? So I love how you said that. Alrighty. So now
Yes.
let's take a, just go in another direction. It says, okay, has the pandemic created a heightened sense of urgency for women to grow their knowledge and practice financial management now more than ever?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you think of majority of the industries that was impacted to COVID, the hospitaliano industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hotels, retail industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can go on and on and on. Majority of women work in those industries, right? So it's definitely affected the unemployment rate amongst women.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely created a heightened sense of urgency. But even prior to COVID,
Right.
pre-COVID, I like to say, women were already at a disadvantage.
Right.
We don't make the same earnings as men. We don't also, unfortunately, sometimes get the same opportunity. And then you scale that back even further to just talk about Black women.
Mm-hmm.
81% of Black women are household breadwinners.
Right.
So, it's definitely impacted COVID. But what I like to say, and I was talking with a really good girlfriend of mine, um, and we were talking about how this is not just a pandemic, this is a plandemic. And if you
Oh,
weren't
wow.
planning before, you better start
Hmm.
planning now, right?
Right.
And so that means that no more excuses, right? I don't care
Mhm.
how much you make. I always say it's not what you make, it's what you save, right? And
Right.
so we all
Hmm.
can afford to put something away, something for a rainy day, right? And storms
Right.
will come, but it's a different type of storm when you have that umbrella, right? You're
Right.
covered and you're protected. So just being strategic and living below your means, I can't tell you how important that is to really
Hmm.
create the lifestyle that you want to be able to save and put away. I'm really, really scared for this younger generation, my children, the Gen
Hmm.
Zs, as I call it. You know, they don't have a concept of money. They want it instant. They want instant gratification. More important, and what is going to happen to security when we get to their generation. So I think it's
Right.
definitely impacted women. Women are always worried about our children and our husbands and our household first. We are
Hmm.
CEOs at the house. And so
Right.
we are looking at how much we're spending at the grocery store. We are
Hmm.
looking at all aspects of our finances to stay afloat and to make sure that we don't know what's going to happen. So preparing for that storm.
Right. Now, I can certainly relate to you when you said about, in terms of disparity that we may have, because a lot of the industries that were affected were, quite frankly, just about every industry was affected, some in a positive way and some in a negative way, right? But as you said, a lot of these service industries, generally, you have women, so of course, the impact is going to be on women in terms of a higher level of layoffs, etc. And as you said, if you didn't put away, as they say, for a rainy day, as our grandmothers would say, then of course, I love what you said. This is not only a pandemic, but it's a plandemic, right? So you were talking about the conversation that you had with your girlfriend. Would you want to expand on the plandemic? Because I know what you're talking about. I could just imagine the conversation, even though I wasn't there. But I think it's huge for you to expand on that one.
Oh yeah. So with the pandemic, we were talking about first of all, you must prepare. You must
Right.
think about and be able to assess the situation and say what could I be doing differently? How can I
Right.
look at my finances differently? I mean, sometimes we don't realize, but just going out to brunch every week, right?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
spend $50, $75 on brunch, you could be tucking that away.
Right.
I've been able to look at my finances and see how much I've saved just with not paying childcare, right? Because we were homeschooling. But that money,
Right.
I act like I was continuing to pay childcare and put that money and tucked it
Right.
away in a savings account. And since March, I looked at it, I'm like, it's over $6,000 in that account. I didn't realize how much I was spending, right? So,
Right.
so, so the pandemic allows you just to sit back and assess your finances, and it starts with creating a budget, right? You
Right.
need to be able to see what is coming in, what's going out, and go item by item to figure out can I lower this expense, and if you can't, you move on to the next one, right? And you
Right.
keep doing that and keep doing that. So, for example, your insurance. Do you have the
Hmm.
bundle package?
Hmm.
If you own, can I refinance my mortgage right now to get a
Right.
lower interest rates? Right now, interest rates are super cheap. I mean, it's never
Right.
been this low to borrow capital.
Hmm.
So everyone should be assessing their situation, even if they are doing okay with their finances.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah. The next
Hmm.
piece to that is, which I know we're going to get into, is looking at how do you utilize your credit, right?
Right. Right.
Credit could actually help you with your saving strategy.
Hmm.
So that pandemic, it's just what do I need to plan differently for a
Right.
rainy day?
Right. So, as a matter of fact, let's go into the credit. I know we were going to get to it, but since the question was asked earlier, right? So I'll bring up Paul's question now, where he says, "My question is, do these credit repair companies really work?" Now, I don't know how you feel about answering about the credit repair companies itself because we don't work for one. However, I'm going to let Shakira take that one first, and I'll add my perspective if there's anything that I need to add after she's answered.
Okay. I want to
Yeah.
say no matter who you're doing business with, you always want to do your due diligence to look into that organization or institution just to find out the details, right? I've had some people that have had good experiences with credit repair companies, and I've had some people that have had bad experiences. But my thing is, why not educate yourself? So let me give you a little education
Right.
around credit. So I always like to talk about the 5 C's to credit. All right, the 5 C's. So no, the first C is character. So what is your character? When you can understand the banking's perspective and how they are assessing the situation, then you
Right.
can understand credit and you can actually manage your own credit. You don't need a credit repair company. So character. Your character is your history, your name. On that first page, when we pull your credit report, we're looking at your address. How long have you been at this particular address? Are you a person that has stability? Or are you constantly moving around, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you pay your bills? Are you paying on time? So all of that speaks to your character. The
Mm-hmm.
second C is capacity, right? So capacity is like, what is your debt to income ratio? You never want to overextend yourself. I always educate people to stay at least 30% of your available balances. You want to keep available. If you
Mm-hmm.
could use the credit and then pay it right off, great. I know some people say, well, is that going to hurt my score? It doesn't hurt your score, right? But
Right.
so what's your capacity, right? Are you overextending yourself? The next
Mm-hmm.
one would be collateral. What are you putting down? Is the transaction going to be something where you're purchasing a home and you're putting 3.5% down, 5% down, 10%? Are you putting
Mm-hmm.
20% down? I'll tell
Right.
you now, since the pandemic, banks have definitely tightened up on their underwriting guidelines. So we
Mm-hmm.
are looking for that purchaser that can put 20%, in some cases 22% down.
Wow.
But yeah, just being conservative right now, because think about it, we really don't know who just lost their job. You could still show us pay stubs for the
Right.
past 2 weeks, but we don't really know if you just lost your job. So in these environments, banks always tend to start to be a little conservative. So what's the
Right.
collateral?
Hopefully we're not losing
Loan
you.
that you're
Okay.
applying for. You losing
Okay.
me? There we go. Okay. Is
Yeah.
it a secure
Mm-hmm.
product or is it an unsecure product? Very, very important, because this makes a difference in the transaction. So
Mm-hmm.
secure means you are putting something down to where if you don't make good on that loan, the bank can go back and they have something that they can take away from you in exchange for you not making good on that loan, right? So you can
Right.
secure it with a car, you can secure it with a CD, with your money in your own banking account. You can
Mm-hmm.
secure with a home. That's the most popular one that most people know about, right? You even can get a
Right.
secure credit card. If your
Right.
credit is not good, I definitely recommend starting by getting a secure credit card. There's some good ones out there. Do your homework. Typically, the interest rates or annual fees are a little bit higher,
Mm-hmm.
but you can put anywhere from $300 to $15,000 down. What they do is they assess your behavior with the credit card from 12 to 18 months. Some
Right.
companies do 24 months,
Mm.
and then if you have good standing, they'll give you that down payment back to you.
Right.
So it gives you an opportunity to build up your credit. So what is the transaction? The specifics of the transaction definitely makes a huge difference, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other thing you want to think about is capital. Again, how much are you putting down? The 3.5%, the 5%. What's the money that you're bringing to the table? And then obviously the last C is conditions, right? Is there
Right.
going to be a co-borrower? Is it just you? Do you need a co-borrower? And oftentimes the underwriter will look and make a recommendation if a co-borrower is required. But what are the overall conditions? What's the interest rate? What's the monthly payment? So when you can educate yourself around all these things, especially the 5 C's to credit, why not
Mm-hmm.
take the time and you can work on your own credit?
So I was trying to describe. You said it says capital. What was the last one you mentioned?
Yeah, so it's character, capacity,
City
collateral,
collateral.
capital, and conditions.
Oh, that's the last one I missed. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though. Collateral and capital. Um, okay. I was about to ask you what's the difference really, but no, yeah, there's a difference. I had to think about it for a minute. Okay. Alrighty. So
Mhm.
guys, I hope that helped in that question. I do LaShawn, thank you so much for scribing. I do hope that that helped you a little bit. And the other thing that I totally echo what Shakira just said, because no, I'm not going to knock the entrepreneurs that do the credit repair service. But as she said, you can go out there and you can see what is the best option for you. Is it that you need to hire that kind of service, or is it that you can do some research for yourself to, in the process, you're going to win two ways, right? You're getting to educate yourself financially and what's best for you. And you also can learn how best to navigate the financial credit repair world for you. So, again, we don't work at, in those organizations, and maybe they'll be good. But as she said, do the research, and also do the research for yourself, knowing if the credit repair, what they're suggesting to you, is the right thing for you. Let me tell you why I really wanted to stress that. It's because I had a girlfriend of mine. All right. She came to me. She asked me some advice in terms of what she should do. She was experiencing some financial hardships. Right. And I told her what I think she should do. She actually did not listen to me, and she went to somebody else. Right. And they told her it was something to do with a bankruptcy lawyer or something. And they told her what she should go and do. And unfortunately, it was a bad thing for her to do, because she really didn't need to file bankruptcy. And sadly, even though she withdrew it, it's already on her record. So even though she didn't have the luxury of utilizing the bankruptcy criteria, she was still being impacted on it 7 years later, because she filed for it, because she's not able to withdraw it, off the records. So that's one of the reasons why I love what Shakira said about going there and doing your research to see what's correct for you. So Lasan says,
yeah, can I add just one other thing? Because what most people say is the time that it takes, right? Because you have to pull your credit, you have to spend time on the phone, you've got to, I would get a little notebook, be organized. But a lot of times you can negotiate past debts on your own. You don't need someone to kind of negotiate that for you. If you set the time aside, even if it's just 1 hour a night after work, do it yourself. But a lot of times if you call these companies, they'll negotiate with you or make some type of payment plan for you on your own. And then the other piece to credit, I think, is people need to think about, how can I use credit smartly? Unfortunately, in so many communities, we are afraid to use credit, right? But I use credit all the time. So let me give you one really good example that I always like to share. And one is, I pay all my bills for the month on my credit card. And I get points.
I love it.
So about 20,000, 15 to 20,000 points a month I'm earning from my credit cards. And then I pay the bill off completely before the 28th of the month, so that I don't accrue any interest, but I get my points. Now, this is what I do with the points, Judy. I comp my points for gift cards to get gas. So now I'm scratching off my gas expense. If I'm traveling, I love to travel. That's a free airline ticket. Today I went grocery shopping. I spent $200 in groceries. I had $100 gift card from my points. And I only came out my pocket with $100 for my groceries. So,
and I'm happy you said that. Sorry to cut you. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
So I won't call you out, but there's somebody on here listening. We had that exact conversation yesterday, right? And the person was saying to me, no, that they tell other people do not use credit cards. And I was like, no, that's bad advice. Actually, no, use your credit card. What you have to be is get a credit card that, as Shakira said, will give you points. And then in addition to that, you are responsible enough, keyword, responsible enough to pay off the balance. Let me tell you how bad that I was with what Shakira just shared with you. I even called my mortgage company. Can I pay you with credit cards?
Because think about it, if that's $1,000 or $1,500 a month, that's a lot of points.
Listen, of course I knew what the answer would be, but my theory is, if I don't ask, I won't know. Right? And the most you could tell me is no, right? So of course, I absolutely love that. All right. So these comments are going so fast. So LaShawn said, okay, I asked you to repeat the list before. It wasn't okay. I'm so happy that you got it. So I was trying to describe them for you guys at the same time. All righty. Yes, she said, that's good. I received so many different quotes from 5 to 250. Okay. So again, do your research and see what works for you, right? Okay. Right. So it helps to establish your credit, right? Absolutely. So as she said just before, right, even if you have to get a secured credit card, you can definitely go ahead and do those things, right? Because in this country, a lot of people say, oh, just use cash. Well, I have a completely different idea about just use cash, because in some instances, yes, cash may be good, but a lot of instances, the way this country is set up financially, it is probably the secondary option that you should use if you can use credit responsibly, right? So that's the key word there. Okay. So
one last thing with credit, right?
Yeah.
I think that, you got to do your homework. I have different cards for different purposes.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
My
Hmm.
card that I use when I travel, that gives me like free foreign currency,
Hmm.
24-hour concierge service. That's my travel card. I have
Right,
another card that gives me triple points when I'm at restaurants and getting gas. And then
right,
I have like my day-to-day card. So,
right.
do your homework and research out there. There's phenomenal credit cards
Hmm.
that will give you phenomenal points. You would be surprised. I
Right.
actually met a lady who I was on my way to Costa Rica, and it was she and her husband's 20th anniversary.
Hmm.
And I was sharing these tips, we were sharing. And long story short, she had comped that her ticket, her mother in law's ticket, and her three children's tickets. And all we had to do was pay for a hotel. And this was
Right.
a part of her strategy for about 3 years that she had been using her points to save up because she knew this trip was coming up and was able to comp everybody and bring her mother-in-law to babysit while they were on vacation. You see, but these things aren't taught, unfortunately, to
You
everybody
know
in America.
what? Then they're really not. And the truth is, like, I remember there was one time that I was going through, a layoff period, and people are saying to me, "How you're still traveling?" Well, first of all, they were booked before I was laid off. But the truth is, when I went, I really spent very little money out of my pocket because all these points were paying for different things, even though the tours, right? Because depending on the card that you use, some cards will even pay for the tour that's affiliated with your vacation. So I'm doing all these tours, I'm doing all these things, and people are wondering, like, how is it that you don't have a job, but you're doing these things, right? Because it's how as you said, the pandemic, right? I didn't allow a pandemic to take hold of me because I planned in advance by utilizing some of the strategies that Shakira just shared in terms of the use of credit. So credit is not a bad thing if used responsibly, and also you educate yourself. So LaShawn is asking, can you share any? I think, LaShawn, you're probably referring to the credit cards that Shakira mentioned. Shakira, you want to share any of those?
So, just because, I do work for the number one
Oh,
financial
yes.
institution,
Yes, yes. Okay. Yes.
a
Yes.
little plug there. So
Right.
I can't really mention any of my competitors,
Okay.
but if you go to our website, we have some phenomenal cards. Actually, probably one of the best credit cards that's out there.
Okay.
And do your homework and your research and find the one that's best for you. And also, when you Google, it'll do like a comparison to like our
Hmm.
card and at least two or three other competitors out there. So
Right.
I'll leave
Yeah.
that there, LaShawn. And if you want, we can talk offline as well. I'll give you my
Right.
contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because yes, yes, to our listening audience, we do work in the financial service industry, so of course we have to keep that in mind also, right? We're being smart. Okay. So, all right. So hopefully, that has helped you guys in terms of the credit question, and we've answered you, as exhaustive as possible. Of course, if you have any other questions, feel free to pop them in, and we'll try our best to respond. Alrighty, so let's just get back now to just some of the other things that we wanted to point about. I want to come back to the impact financially on women of color in terms of the percent that you gave, which was at 81%. But before we even go there, let's look at it on a broader level first, right? So
Mhm.
you already gave some of the tips of how we can navigate from a credit point of view the pandemic. Now, if somebody has been laid off, or in the process of being laid off, right? Share your thoughts in terms of financial management and the uncertain times, pandemic, and even beyond.
Yeah, so unfortunately, 47 million Americans are faced with this, and it's unfortunate. So my
Right.
heart goes out to them because it just makes it even more competitive in the job field. But I would say, hopefully, the person that we're talking about was
Hmm.
smart and invested in their 401k and pension plan.
Hmm.
If they had a 401k plan, you definitely can withdraw from it. In fact, right
Right.
now, I know the government has some guidelines now where you can withdraw from it penalty free if you have not if you've been unemployed. Now you still
Hmm.
have to pay taxes on it, so you want to speak to your accountant. I'm not
Right.
giving any tax advice because I don't know what
Right.
tax bracket you're in, but you will not have to pay a penalty for
Right.
withdrawing it before the mandatory age for retirement. So
Hmm.
look into that. If you have credit cards, hopefully you were smart and had some of the insurances that come with the credit card. You know how you pay like 80 or 90 cents per dollar or per $100. And if you get unemployed, you can just make one phone call and they'll wipe out all your credit card bills. Hopefully,
Oh.
this individual have taken advantage of that.
Hmm.
If you have insurance policies, call up your insurance company. A lot of times you can take out
Hmm.
the cash value if that's needed, just to give you a little extra cushion. But it's going to be rough out there for a little bit. And
Right.
re-look at all. Again, it goes back to that budget. Looking at every item on your budget and seeing what can I cut back and what could I cut expenses from
Right.
until you can get back on your feet. Mhm.
Right. Now, I heard a friend of mine. He was talking to me, and he says, "Oh, this was great that his mortgage company called him and say, oh, okay, if you're having any hardships, and they gave him the opportunity to delay his payments, and he didn't really need
Yes.
it, but he took it anyway." Now, I was kind of questioning that in my mindset because I still think the interests are still being accumulated, right?
Correct.
So, what are your
So
thoughts on that?
yeah, so you want to do your homework. Call your companies. What some companies are doing was, because I thought the same thing. I was like, wait a minute, this sounds like a good situation. Let me call up.
Right,
Maybe
right.
I can get 2, 3 months and just pay it back and use that 3,500, to maybe get my bathroom done or do a couple upgrades. But when I
Uh-huh.
called out for the company, what I found was that they were giving you 3 months that you could not pay. But once the
Right.
3 months was up, they wanted that whole payment back in full.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
The
mm-hmm.
other companies are or were offering to defer it to the back of the loan. So but again, to your point, you're going to pay interest on that loan amount,
Right.
even though you have to the end of the loan to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also want to ask, do you have to pay that lump sum 3 months all at once at the end of the loan,
Right.
or are they going to extend it out 3 additional months? So these are the questions that you want to ask.
Right.
But hey, listen, if you don't have a job and you can't pay your mortgage, it is what it is. Just
Right.
deferring it is going to be that option that works best for you.
Right.
And my situation, it didn't really make sense for me to do that. It wasn't like I didn't have the money. I thought, and I'm glad I called and asked questions, because it was
Right.
very misleading in the beginning when the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
You just were getting these alerts and information saying you could skip your mortgage payment, you could skip your mortgage payment. Oh, one
Right.
last thing. There's also some information out there too right now. If you are a landlord and you
Mm-hmm.
have investment properties, and if any of your tenants have lost their jobs.
Okay.
So I would Google or also call your mortgage companies. They have some relief if your tenants have lost their job.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
that's good to
Yeah.
know. Right.
Right.
And I think the key thing that I'm taking away from what you just said is that everybody's situation is different. So because it's different, that situation with the mortgage example I just gave may work for someone but may not work for you. So of course, knowing your situation, understand how long have you been out of work? What is your list of expenses and how will that help me? And of course, as Shakira said, ask questions of the bank. Find out, or does that mean then you're going to extend my mortgage by 3 additional months within the term? Or do I have to pay all of that back all at once? Because of course it does make a difference, right? It may seem so sweet up front, but then later on, you have some kind of hardship there. So of course, utilize questioning and getting yourself educated. All right. So, the one of the things that I wanted to talk about. So now let's take a beeline back to women of color, right? Because obviously we are women of color here, so we do understand that, as you said, the disparity that you just gave in terms of the 81%. Now, how do you think that women of color in particular, so speaking to all my sisters out there, women of color sisters who are listening to this in this moment, how do you think that they should plan differently than the general population if needs be, if they should?
So, particularly women of color, who is the fastest growing entrepreneur segment.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to all the entrepreneurs out there. We see you, we appreciate you, we acknowledge you. I have so many girlfriends who are entrepreneurs, have their own businesses, and was thriving. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic hit, and it was like, "Er." So I think first off, the biggest takeaway for so many women of color is look at, and just everybody, but especially to answer your question, what is your relationship with your bank?
Okay.
I got so many phone calls with people that was frustrated when the pandemic hit and the PPP loan was established,
Oh
right?
wow, yeah,
And
I
I
remember that.
think
Mm-hmm.
that many didn't understand all the details to the PPP loan. So I would first start to and look at post COVID, and as we're still going through, what is my relationship with my bank? So, for
Right.
example, if you just have a checking relationship and that's
Mhm.
it, that's not what we call a relationship at the bank.
Right.
We are
Right.
looking at, do you have multiple relationships, multiple products with us? So do we have your checking? Do we have your savings? Do we have your credit card? Do you have your
Mhm.
mortgage with us? Do you have investments with us? The more multiple things you have, that's what we consider as a relationship. So let's
Right.
back up for a minute to PPP.
Mhm.
Everyone just heard PPP, grant, loan, and I can get some free dollars, right? What they
Right.
didn't understand was that PPP is actually a loan that
Mhm.
can turn into a grant, and if you satisfy all the conditions,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you had to use 70. At first it started off at 80, then it kept dropping 75. Now I think it's down to 70% of that. The funds had to go towards your payroll expenses, then it was
Mhm.
operational expenses, and it keeps changing because as we go on during this pandemic, we find that business owners have different needs, right?
Right.
But so what the banks did originally is we looked at who are the people that we have relationships with, and if you don't make good on these funds, who are we going to can guarantee that we'll get those dollars back? And so I
Right.
think our first approach was to look at the people that the corporations that we had relationships with, and that's why the money went to some of the bigger corporations, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so to that small mom and pop business owner, if you just have your one little business checking account, that's not really a relationship. So I really suggest going in, sitting with a personal banker. Does your bank know you, and do you know your bank? And when I
Right.
say know you, do they understand your business, what you do? We have business bankers who will come out to your business and get to know you, assess
Mhm.
what your needs are. I
Mhm.
think every business owner should have an emergency line of credit.
Right.
So if anything like this ever happens again, you're not, waiting for Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
Your employees have to get paid. So that emergency line of credit will help you looking at how are you doing your day-to-day operational expenses.
Mhm.
Another thing that I see oftentimes with smaller business owners is they commingle funds. You should have
Right.
your personal finances separate from your business finances, right?
Right.
You should try
Yeah.
to have a business credit card if possible, right?
Mhm.
So I think, and then when you sit down with your personal banker, they're going to go over all of these things with you to try to help you. So I think it's definitely affected Black women in particular,
Mhm. Mhm.
because we are the fastest growing entrepreneur segment out there, and this really, really hurt. And you can
Right.
watch all the different news outlets have different stories on all business. On the restaurant industry was hit
Mhm.
extremely hard. I
Right.
mean, if you look, New Jersey is still only doing outdoor seating. Think
Yeah.
about it.
It is.
That
Yeah.
really,
Mhm.
really hurts your business. New York, I mean, the market that I manage in, a lot of my restaurant owners have closed their doors and they don't think that they're going to be able to reopen the doors.
Right.
If you're in some places in Manhattan, you don't even have the luxury of doing outdoor seating.
No, you don't, because everything is just on top of each other. And even in New Jersey, if your restaurant is not set up in a location where you have a corner property or land space in front of your building, the outdoor seating is that's not an option. As a matter of fact, to be honest, I was in Princeton just last week, and Princeton, to help the restaurants, they actually have part of the sidewalk that is not the sidewalk, the street and the
Mm-hmm.
sidewalk that is actually closed off. So people are literally dining in the middle of the street. So that's what some towns are actually doing to help these restaurants out. So totally get that. So guys,
Yeah.
hopefully so what I'm going to do, I said, of course, we focus a lot on the corporate setting, but I'm also going to do is we do have people, like myself, who we're in the corporate setting, but we're also straddle on both sides, right? Where we are into the entrepreneurial space in addition. So I think what I wanted to then segue into says, so oftentimes we hear the phrase like, let your corporate job be your silent investor, right? So typically, you know, as I said, we have the women that are straddling both spaces. Now, what would you say to these women regarding bracing for the whole financial uncertainty? I know I heard some of the answers in there, but is there anything in addition that you would share with women like those who are straddling both sides of the fence?
I see Simone. I don't know if you're seeing, she's one of our listeners out there, and she just put something that I think hits right on the nail.
Okay.
It says, it's so important not to let your pride stop you from taking advantage of financial opportunities and asking for help. Pride won't put money in your pocket. Live within your means. You go,
Oh,
Simone. Let's give Simone some snaps, honey.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
But
most
she's telling
definitely.
the truth.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I love that you called that out too, right? Because what Simone also mentioned, which is some of what you've mentioned, even with how we opened the program, right? We spoke about mindset, right? Because mindset is attached to the pride, the ego, and all that stuff that at the end of the day, as Simone just said, right? It won't put money in your pocket, right? So live within your
Yeah.
means. So thanks, Simone, for pulling that out there, right? So great.
Yeah, and I think surrounding yourself with communities like the one you've been so successful to build and pull people like Simone together to
Mhm.
get information, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, I just hate it, but in the Black community, we're so can be judgmental at times, right? And it's not about that. It's not about bragging. It's not about. I share all the time. You know why? I
Right.
share because I'm a Black girl from Jersey City, grew up in the projects, made it out, and there are other young girls that are watching me. And so I want to. If I just help one other sister, then I've done my
Right.
job. And I've always been
Right.
taught that you, as you go, you turn back and you give your hand, you pull the next person up. So I'm
Mhm.
always willing to share information. I share amongst my girlfriends, my family, whoever is following me. I'm always willing to put information out there. It's so important. I think investing is important. I was fortunate to find out, get a really good investment opportunity, and I shared that with my girlfriend and held her hand step by step and was so proud of her when she got
That
her
is
first
awesome.
investment property. So I think we
Yeah.
have to do more of that support. There's no pride, there's no ego. Listen, everybody's hurting. What COVID did was level
Right.
out the playing field. So we
It
are
sure
all
did.
struggling.
It sure did. And I love what you just said because it's always been one of my pet peeves, right? And this is very basic, but I remember once a girlfriend of mine, she called me, right? It was, and this is simple, but it's the mindset that I'm talking about. So forget the example. Think about the mindset. She called me up and she's all excited. She's, oh, Macy's was having this, the jewelry on sale, and it was only, everything was basically $8, right? $7.99. I was like, oh, awesome, right? There's one not too far from my house because of course we love accessories, right? And she goes, oh, it was yesterday. I was ticked off because my point was, what's the point in sharing with me after the fact? I cannot benefit the way in which you did. Now, again, forget the example. As Shakira said, she always believes in pulling someone up. And that's one of the things that we want to share and, also, want to get into your bones. Information is power. If we don't help to educate and share the knowledge that you've learned, because remember, especially for us women of color, we did not grow, and even men too, right? We necessarily did not grow up with that kind of education, right? We had to learn it along the way. I remember, some of you may know I'm not American. So when I first came into the country, and I know just by happenstance, I ended up getting a job through a temp firm working at Wall Street, corporation. I was fascinated with how quickly everything went because I speak fast, I think fast. So it was like the perfect industry for me, right? But then I started wondering about all this money, so I'm like, oh, okay. But what I did was I went out and I got a book. I bought a book to educate myself and the different kind of investments and what was going on, because I actually said to myself, I said, you know what? This cannot only be for white people. I want some. Okay? I literally said that, right? I want some, right? So it's not a matter of like a phrase. It's just that obviously I worked in investment banking, right? So what do I see predominantly? I'm usually the only Black one sitting there, right? So I would see all these traders and I'm working with them and they're making all this money and it's just like nothing to them. So that's why sometimes even I have to temper my language. Whereas when somebody's talking about, 10,000, I'm like, okay, because I'm used to hearing numbers in the billions, right? And the thousands, etc., the hundreds of thousands. So I have to realize that is not everybody's experience. However, don't get caught up in that experience. Get caught up in the fact that when I came to this country, right? And I guess I landed a temp job in an investment firm, my first investment firm that's not around anymore. It went out with World Trade Center. when, the bombings, right? So I used to work initially at this brokerage firm called RMJ Securities. And that was my first introduction into the investment world. But I didn't just sit there and just be a support operational staff. I decided that I wanted some of that pie too. So I decided to go out and get a book and educate myself. And that's how the journey started, right? And I didn't start off, even just investing a whole lot of money at first. I started off with the things that wasn't as intimidating, right? I bought what was referred to as the drip stocks. Drip stock is DRIP. And what that basically is that you find a blue chip company, like say for instance, Affleck or, Wells Fargo, and I'm not giving trading advice. Let me be clear. Okay. I'm just telling you what I did. Okay. So I found those kind of stocks, and you can actually register with the firm and buy stocks on a monthly basis. Now, what they do is that they link to your checking account, and they say you set it up, like for instance with Merck, they do $50. That's the minimum Merck will do. So if Merck's stock is $50, it will buy one whole share. If it's more than $50, it will buy a fractional share. It doesn't matter. So what I did back then for my son when he was born, I set it up that way. So then now when he's now 29 this year, right? He had those stocks and he had all these shares, because back home we would say one coca filled basket. And that's what I was doing. I did not allow the fact that I didn't know anything about Wall Street to stop me from getting a piece of that pie. Then, of course, as the years went on, I got a bit more sophisticated, et cetera, and I knew what to do. But don't knock that drip stock option, because it's a way to get into the market and to invest in a stock without having a whole lot of money, right? Because I have different ones. It was $50, $25. If it can't buy a full share, it will buy a fractional share. But it's a great way to do for your kids, for those of you who are listening. So that's my piece there.
And that's that trading generational wealth.
Exactly.
That you started off talking about.
Exactly.
You are passing generational wealth off to your son.
Absolutely. Listen, thank you. Right. So Simone will say we have to learn to show gratitude for our circumstances and invest in people as much as you would business. Pass the baton, share the welcome knowledge. And absolutely, Simone. I'm loving Simone right about now. Okay. I love everybody that's listening, but I just love the comments that are coming through. Alrighty. So let me just go to a question before we move on. So Paul said, if I win the lotto, do I take all the money at once over the 20-year period? Paul, are you trying to tell us something? Should I come call you?
Paul, let's be friends. No. So I'll answer, and would love for Judy for you to add in, of course, your opinion. Paul, I think it's a personal decision, and it's also something you want to speak to your accountant with. Are you good with money? Are you the kind of person that if you get that lump sum, you, Paul, and are you just going to blow it by getting a boat and everything else you ever wanted? Or are you the kind of person that needs to be conservative and have it spread out over a time frame? So I think it's really just a personal decision, and speaking to an accountant, because you want to know how much are the taxes that you're gonna pay on that money versus the lump sum and taking it in increments. You agree, Judy?
Totally. As a matter of fact, that's with exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say the tax part, but then you just added that at the end, because of course, as you said, everybody's situation is different. Your tax bracket is different. And of course, you've just been zoomed into another tax bracket with that kind of winning. So it would make a difference in how you take the money. So the best person to talk to would be your accountant / tax personnel to tell you what's the best format to actually take that in. All right. Absolutely. And of course, what Shakira said about your level of responsibility when it comes down to financial managing, money, period.
Yeah, so, and unfortunately, we do see so many stories of people that came into those type of earnings and unfortunately just didn't manage it correctly. So I think getting that consultation will help you make that decision, Paul. Great question.
Right. Okay. He says, be my financial advisor. Well, that's another conversation for another part. Okay. Okay. So, all right. So the other thing that I wanted to share with you guys before we moved on, and because as you know, I'm everything hope, I'm everything confidence. So the other thing that I wanted to share with you while you're going through this, one of the things that I did as my way of also helping you is to create the Activate Your Destiny webinar. It's basically a 2-week webinar. It was purposely made that short so you can get the things and the tools and the methods that you need to get back in the right mindset to put yourself out there, as well as to help you to either, if you're going through the pandemic experience right now, in terms of if you still have a job but you are feeling that level of anxiety, you're not sure how do you manage certain things, and how do you, even if you're a manager, how do I manage my staff, who now, I was trained in leadership, but I wasn't trained in how to manage staff who are coming in with anxiety. I wasn't trained myself of how do I lead, right? And I have my own anxiety because I have to deal with my own kids at home if I have kids. And even if I don't have kids, I too am experiencing the effect of being quarantined, can't go out the way I want to go, or I'm going out with some level of anxiety because I don't want to get COVID, right? So those are some of the reasons what impacted your level of hope. And of course, if your hope is impacted, it also has a domino effect on your confidence. So that's one of the reasons why I created the Activate Your Destiny program. So feel free, you'll see the link up above this live. Feel free to, click on that link, go there and, peruse it. And, let me know. If you have two options. You have the options to go at your own pace. And then you have the option where you literally sit in a program, a webinar question and answer session with me. So you have options that are out there, and it was purposely set up that way so you can get the tools that you need to get back on track. All righty. So Paul, you also awesome. So Paul says, I only spend on my grandson and my spending days are gone, which is even more the reason, since you said grandson, I'm assuming that, you're 40 plus. So more so why you need to speak to that financial advisor. All right. So awesome. All right. So let's now talk about, we spoke a little bit about the credit already. Now let's talk about leadership. All right. So I love your trajectory, and I loved how you started off as, the teller, and you rose through the ranks, and, you not only just have a leadership position corporately, but you're leading in your community. So I absolutely love that about you. That's one of the things, I think I first met you on LinkedIn, right? And it was some of the things that I admired about you, just watching you on social media and see what's going on with you. So I absolutely love that. So let's talk about leadership now, right? If you also heard when I spoke about within the program, because it is a legitimate gripe that I've had women who spoke to me about, like, I am now a leader, I'm managing people. How do I manage, through a pandemic? How do I lead through a pandemic? So let's just share with me, how has been your experience and your leadership being impacted by these uncertain times caused by the pandemic?
Great question, Judy. I got to tell you, starting 2020, one of my prayers to God was to grow me, to strengthen me, and to prepare me for whatever He has that's next for me.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, I didn't know He's going to do level. And I have definitely been challenged this year. And I like to think that I'm a really, really good leader. But I have learned so much about myself. I have learned about other people during this pandemic. I have learned the importance of empathy and compassion. Right. Hang on, I think okay. I've learned that my mic just came off. Okay. I've learned the importance of empathy and compassion. I learned to just take time out and get to know and understand people's circumstances, because people are really going through some tough times right now.
Right.
I've been focused a lot, and not just me. I'm fortunate to work for an amazing firm that strongly pushes the importance of mental health. Right. And we don't just say it because it's a lot of politically correct things happening right now. Right. Just because of the heightened situation around so many courageous conversations that I'm glad that are finally taking place. Right. But I can truly say that the organization that I work for stands and lives and breathes by it. But I have learned to put people first, to be compassionate, and to ask a lot of questions, right? I want to know, what are you feeling? So when this first happened, I don't think anyone really knew the magnitude. I was thinking, oh, this is like a 1 week, 2 week, it'll
Right.
blow off, you know. I didn't know how big it was going to be. And then when we started closing locations, I had to come up with a new strategy of how do I create an environment where my people can still come to work, that they feel comfortable, that they feel safe, but yet we can still be there to support our clients. And I created 3 call centers in my markets where my team showed up every day and just worked the phones. They had their same desk every day. You know, we had shortened our hours, no suits, just come as you are, jeans, sweats, whatever. And that made them feel comfortable. But I also know the business, and I know that we're not a nonprofit organization, that we also still need to be there to help our customers succeed financially. And guess what? Our customers needed us. You couldn't put the PPP loan on the system. Our first day when we launched PPP, we got 65,000 applications within, so to the point where our system crashed. So my bankers were taking applications over the phone to help my customers. So it has truly challenged me in ways to be strategic, even more creative, even more innovative. It will change the game of banking, unfortunately, in many industries. But I think now we've learned, there were some things that we did extremely well. And there's some things that we had some learnings on, right? And that's okay too. I made sure to give my people what I felt like, what I heard them tell me that they needed. Bringing in different mental health specialists to speak to them. If they needed time, not questioning, so those are the things, those are the moments that people remember when you impact their career. And there were some people that just said, listen, I can't do it. I need to be home. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. And that was okay too. So I've learned so much during this time. I'm grateful for my team. They are amazing.
That's great to hear. I hope somebody from your team hear this. Even though I'm sure they know, but to hear you say it outside, where it's outside of them, it's not like you're saying you're giving a compliment. Sometimes somebody gives you a compliment because they want you to do more work, right? But here you are, saying this, and obviously they're not here. So I hope they hear it. Social media is an interesting thing. Maybe they come across it. So one of the key things that I heard there, and I always think the mark of a good leader is the ability to also exercise empathy through their leadership, right? And to put the people first. Those are some of the things that I view as the mark of a good leader, because if you're not able to put the people first, yes, you work for a for-profit organization, but at the end of the day, if the people are not taken care of, well, the organization is really not going to make that money. You know what I mean? You do need to have them there. So,
can I tell you something, Jody?
Sure.
Judy, that didn't come easy for me, because growing up with a single mom, I was taught to make it happen. I don't always think to ask for more. I figure out, what do I have and how do I make it happen? Times when I would see people show up around me who didn't have that same work ethic, or who always, I felt, had an excuse. It was like, listen, I done made it happen with less than, and you're complaining? So I had to learn to take myself out of my experience and put myself in their experience. Another thing is, my mom used to always teach me, and I said it earlier, but you represent me. And so I always have that in the back of my mind. And when people aren't showing up, I think that's a representation of me, but it's not. So when people fail and they don't show up, I had to learn that's not on me. I gave them all the tools to be successful. I gave them all the resources. I was there. That's on them who's not showing up, and they're not going to go where they want to be in their career. So I had to learn it.
But but that is okay, right?
Because I just thought everybody like me, you make it happen.
Right. I totally get you, and I totally understand, because I remember too, one of the participants that was within the program, and because one of the things we teach in the program is emotional regulation, right? And it's tied into emotional intelligence also. And as you said, that's something that you had to learn because you're thinking, okay, I make it happen with less because of my background and they're representing me, right? The way they show up, the way they answer the phone, are they professional, et cetera, et cetera. I'm, responsible for all these branches. So you are a reflection and extension of me, where that's sadly, sometimes it's a party going on in our heads, right? Because we just think that we make this happen, so it has to be. So I'm happy that you just pointed out you had a human moment where you two had to learn. You had to learn that empathy. You had to become a better leader. And you said you asked God and he answered you. Okay. You just didn't answer you probably in the way that you expected. But the great thing that I heard is that you said you were able to grow and you were to have even more of an effective leadership that you already had. So kudos to you, man. I'm loving hearing what you just said. I love it.
And learning about different generations has helped me as well. Like when my baby boomers, I connect with them differently than I do my millennials and my Gen Z, and just really understanding and meeting that person where they are. That's going to help in your leadership.
Right. And as usual, when you're having a great conversation, the time that goes like that. Okay, we are already a little bit over our mark, but I don't want us to leave without asking this question, because we spoke about our Gen X. So let's just jump to that one there, and we'll just have to table the others for next time. But let's just talk about our Gen X in terms of, the challenges and the resources that we have, right? In terms of achievement, financial goals, etc. What are some of the challenges you think that they would encounter? I know you mentioned some things before, but just to give a quick, couple of seconds answer on that. We don't want to leave them out because they're our next generation.
Sure. So I think the Gen Zs coming up, I think some of the challenges they're going to be faced with is what kind of debt do we leave that generation? And that's why it's so important to get out there in November and vote, or send your ballots out. So a little plug there. Please make sure you go out and vote. I don't care who you choose to vote for. That's a personal decision, but it is a right that somebody died for. So go out and vote. But I think they're going to be faced with challenges in terms of debt inherited. How are you going to pay for school, for college? Education is going to be a big thing for them. I think my daughters, and because I like to say my little one, I think she's a part of, she did. Both of them actually are Gen Z, and they think money grows on trees. But they also have grown up on the internet where they only see the aftermath. They see the glitz and the glamour, but they see mommy like this, but they don't see all the hard work that goes behind being successful. So I think they want that instant, immediate gratification, which sometimes is not always the way to get it, right? You can't always take shortcuts. Sometimes you actually got to do the work and put in the work and grind and start from the bottom like I did and work your way up. But now I have so much more credibility when I go in. I can do the ATMs. I can roll up my sleeves and get in there with my team. And they're like, Miss Green, you know what? I started that. Yes, I know how to do this. Or they're just thinking about a title. And I'm like, no, I'm a part of the team. So if I'm here to chip in and work with you and help you. And it just builds so much more respect and credibility, where I think sometimes that younger generation is really quick to be the CEO overnight. And it's okay to be the boss, but you also got to know how to be the worker. And when you learn how to be a worker, then you become a better boss.
So. You need to pay the dues and go through the process. When you skip out on the process, to be honest, is in a lot of cases, not every case, but it doesn't necessarily make you the best leader possible because you didn't experience some things that were integral to your growth. Alrighty. So that, of course, because of the time, we're not able to, go after every single thing that we wanted to share, but minimally, I hope you guys have really, enjoyed and picked up different nuggets that we have shared. And what I'm going to do before we go is just to ask Shakira, is there anything that you'd like to share with our listening audience, for those that are here live and we're watching the replay?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, I want to stay connected to all of you out there. So please go find me. I'm on Instagram. I am _Shakira Green, SHERKERA Green, like the color, no E. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. If you email me, DM me, I promise I respond to everybody. because I'm passionate about what I do, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, Judy. You are amazing. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it, and thank you all for watching. Thank
Right.
you.
And thank you, Shakira, for definitely saying yes to me when I, reached out to you. I do appreciate that. And guys, I hope you have gotten some things, some nuggets, something at least resonated with you. If it's not for you, then maybe it will resonate with somebody else in your family, your friends, your circle. But of course, don't keep these nuggets to yourself. Go out there and implement what you need to implement. But more importantly, educate yourself when it comes to finances, because it's about high time, especially us people of color, move beyond lagging behind. We need to, catch up so we can definitely build our financial legacy. I'm all about the greens. Okay, so let's do that. All right, Shakira, thank you so much. Take care. And to everybody who has participated, thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.